Steve Harvey was 3 questions into what seemed like a regular Family Feud episode when a contestant's daughter said something that made him stop the game completely. The revelation about why her mother had missed 17 years of her children's lives led to one of the most powerful surprises in television history, and a reunion that proved some heroes don't wear capes. They carry briefcases. It was a Tuesday afternoon in November 2024 at the Family Feud studio in Atlanta. Steve Harvey walked out in a striking red suit that he'd chosen specifically for this taping, though he didn't yet know just how perfect the color of passion and power would be for what was about to unfold. The suit was impeccably tailored, with subtle black piping along the lapels and a black silk pocket square that gave it a distinguished edge. He felt good, energized, ready for another day of family fun and outrageous answers. The two families competing were the Taylors from Detroit, Michigan, and the Johnsons from Memphis, Tennessee. The Taylor family immediately caught Steve's attention. There was something about the way they held themselves, a quiet dignity mixed with an almost giddy excitement that suggested this appearance meant more to them than just a game show. Mary Taylor stood at the center of her family, a 62-year-old woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Despite everything she'd been through, though Steve didn't know her story yet, she radiated warmth. Her children flanked her. David, 41, a tall man with his mother's eyes and gentle smile. Sarah, 39, who kept touching her mother's arm as if to assure herself she was really there. Marcus, 37, who stood protective and proud. And Lisa, 35, the baby of the family who would soon reveal the truth that would change everything. "Welcome, Taylor family," Steve said with his characteristic enthusiasm. "Mary, tell me about this beautiful family you've got here." Mary's smile widened, and her voice was strong but emotional. "Steve, these are my 4 blessings. My children who, well, they're the reason I'm standing here today. They never gave up on me, and now we're finally getting to do something fun together as a family." There was something in the way she said "finally" that caught Steve's attention, but he continued with his usual opening banter. "And what do you do, Mary?" "I work at a community center in Detroit," Mary replied. "I help people who are trying to rebuild their lives after difficult circumstances. It's my way of giving back." "That's beautiful," Steve said, then moved to her eldest. "David, tell me about yourself." David cleared his throat, emotion already evident in his voice. "I'm a social worker, Steve. I work with at-risk youth in Detroit. Followed in my mom's footsteps of helping others. Family business of helping people," Steve noted. "I like that. Sarah?" Sarah smiled, her hand still on her mother's arm. "I'm a teacher. Middle school. 8th grade English." "8th grade? You're braver than me," Steve joked. "Marcus?" "I'm a nurse," Marcus said. "Emergency room at Detroit General." "And Lisa?" Lisa straightened slightly. "I'm an attorney, Steve. Civil rights law." "Wow," Steve said, impressed. "Teacher, social worker, nurse, and lawyer. Mary, you raised some accomplished children here." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "They raised themselves for a lot of years. I can't take credit for how amazing they turned out." It was an odd comment, and Steve noticed the children exchanging glances. But before he could probe further, it was time to start the game. The Taylors won the face-off and chose to play first. "All right, we surveyed 100 people," Steve announced. "Top 6 answers on the board. Name something people do when they're nervous." David was at the podium. "Bite their nails, Steve." "Good answer." The family cheered as it appeared as number 2 on the board. The game continued smoothly, with the Taylor family showing good teamwork and enthusiasm. But there was an undercurrent of emotion that seemed deeper than typical game show excitement. The way they celebrated each small victory, the way they kept looking at Mary with such love and pride, having all suggested a story waiting to be told. During a break between questions, Steve chatted with them more casually. "You all seem really close. Not all families work this well together." "We learn to depend on each other," Sarah said quietly. When you go through hard times, you either fall apart or come together. We came together. What kind of hard times? Steve asked gently. The siblings looked at each other, then at their mother. Mary nodded slightly, and Lisa spoke up. Steve, our mom missed a big chunk of our childhood. She was away for 17 years. The studio grew quiet. Steve's expression grew serious. Away? She was wrongfully convicted of a crime she didn't commit, Lisa said, her voice steady but full of emotion. She went to prison when I was 7 years old. She didn't come home until I was 24. The audience gasped. Steve took a step back, visibly affected. Wrongfully convicted? Mary, is this true? Mary nodded, her chin held high despite the tears in her eyes. 1996 to 2013. 17 years for something I didn't do. But I don't want to dwell on the past, Steve. I'm here with my babies now. That's what matters. Steve had to take a moment to compose himself. In all his years of hosting, he'd heard many stories, but this hit different. He looked at the 4 adult children who had grown up without their mother, then at Mary, who had missed so much but somehow maintained her grace and warmth. Can you tell us what happened? Steve asked gently. Only if you're comfortable. Mary took a deep breath. I was working as a bookkeeper for a small company in Detroit. Money went missing, $48,000 over several months. They said I did it, that I had embezzled the funds. But I didn't, Steve. I would never. I was a single mother, with 4 young children. Why would I risk their future like that? David picked up the story. Mom was given a public defender who barely looked at her case. The trial lasted 3 days. They said she'd hidden the money, but they never found it. Didn't matter. She got 20 years. 20 years? Steve exclaimed. For $48,000? The judge wanted to make an example, Marcus said bitterly. Said white-collar crime was getting out of hand. Didn't matter that Mom had no prior record, that she was raising 4 kids alone, that there was no physical evidence. Steve turned back to Mary. How old were your children when you went away? Mary's voice broke. David was 15. Sarah was 13. Marcus was 11. And my baby Lisa was just 7. 7 years old, Steve. She needed her mama, and I couldn't be there. The studio was completely silent, except for the sound of people crying in the audience. Steve's own eyes were wet. Who raised them? My mother, Mary said. God rest her soul. She was 68 years old and took in 4 grandchildren without hesitation. She passed away 2 years after I came home, but she lived long enough to see me free. How did you get out? Steve asked. What changed? This is where Lisa stepped forward, wiping her eyes. I became a lawyer because of what happened to Mom. I went to law school with one goal: to get her out. But I was still in school when we finally caught a break. What kind of break? Lisa's voice grew stronger. The real embezzler confessed. A co-worker of Mom's got caught stealing from another company 8 years ago. When they were processing his case, he admitted to the theft Mom was convicted for. He'd been the comptroller, had access to all the same systems Mom did, and he'd set her up to take the fall. The audience made sounds of outrage and sympathy. Steve shook his head in disbelief. So, this man let your mother sit in prison for years knowing she was innocent? 9 years, Marcus confirmed. She'd already served 9 years when he confessed, and even then, it took another 8 years to get her released. The system doesn't move fast when it comes to admitting mistakes. But you didn't give up, Steve said, looking at the children with admiration. Never, Sarah said firmly. We visited every week we were allowed. Drove 3 hours each way to see her for 1 hour. Grandma made sure we never missed a visit. Every week for 17 years? Steve asked, amazed. Every single week, David confirmed. Christmas mornings, we'd open presents early so we could make visiting hours. Birthdays, graduations, we'd celebrate in the prison visiting room. Mom missed everything, but we made sure she was still part of it all. Mary was crying openly now. They'd bring me photos, report cards, videos when those were allowed. Sarah would read me her essays. Marcus would tell me about his basketball games, play-by-play. David would update me on every single day I missed. And Lisa, my baby, would draw me pictures, and later, when she was older, she'd tell me about her plan to become a lawyer and bring me home. Steve had to pause to wipe his eyes. The production team was crying. The audience was crying. Even the other competing family was visibly moved. "So when did you finally come home?" Steve asked. "June 15th, 2013, Mary said without hesitation. 2:47 in the afternoon. I remember every detail. The gate opened and there they were, my 4 babies, all grown up. David had gray in his hair. Sarah was holding her own baby. Marcus was in his nursing scrubs because he'd left work to be there. And Lisa was holding a sign that said, 'Welcome home, Mom. Now we really begin.'" "That must have been overwhelming," Steve said softly. "It was the best and worst day of my life," Mary admitted. "Best because I was free and with my children. Worst because I realized just how much I'd missed. 17 years of their lives, Steve. First dates, proms, graduations, heartbreaks, victories. I missed it all. But she didn't let it break her," Lisa said proudly. "First thing Mom did was enroll in college. Got her degree in social work at 56 years old. Now she helps other people who've been through the justice system. And they help me," Mary added. "The work keeps me going. Every person I help rebuild their life helps me rebuild mine." Steve was about to respond when his earpiece crackled. The producers were telling him something that made his eyes widen. He held up a hand to the family. "Hold on, folks. I'm getting some information here." He listened intently, then looked at Mary with an expression of wonder. "Mary, there's someone here who wants to see you." Mary looked confused. "Someone here? Who? Do you remember an attorney named Catherine Chen?" Mary's hand flew to her mouth. "Catherine? She's here?" "Who's Catherine Chen?" Sarah asked. Mary's voice was full of emotion. "She's the attorney who took my case pro bono when everyone else had given up. She worked for 11 years without payment to get me free." Steve nodded. "Well, she's backstage, and she has something she wants to tell you. Can we bring her out?" Mary nodded, unable to speak. The audience applauded as a woman in her 50s walked onto the stage. Catherine Chen was professionally dressed, but her face showed the emotion of the moment. She and Mary embraced, both crying, holding each other for a long moment. When they separated, Catherine turned to the children. "You probably don't remember me. You were all so young during the trial. I remember you," David said. "You came to Grandma's house. You promised you'd bring Mom home." "It took longer than I hoped," Catherine said sadly. "I'm sorry for that." "Don't apologize," Mary said firmly. "You gave me my life back. You worked all those years for nothing." "Not for nothing," Catherine interrupted. "For justice. And speaking of justice," she reached into her briefcase and pulled out an envelope. "Mary, this is why I'm really here today." Mary took the envelope with shaking hands. "What is this?" "Open it," Catherine encouraged. Mary opened the envelope and pulled out a check. Her legs nearly gave out. "This can't be right. $2.8 million? The audience gasped. The Taylor children gathered around their mother, staring at the check in disbelief. Catherine nodded. "The state compensation for wrongful conviction. $150,000 for each year you were incarcerated, plus interest. It was approved last month, but I wanted to deliver it personally. I thought this would be a good place to do it, surrounded by your family." Mary was sobbing now, the check shaking in her hands. "I don't. This is too much." "It's not enough," Catherine said firmly. "No amount of money can give you back those 17 years, but it can help you and your children build the future you deserve." Steve stepped forward. "Catherine, can I ask you something? Why did you work on Mary's case for so long without payment? 11 years is a long time to work for free." Catherine smiled through her tears. "I met Mary at the beginning of her incarceration. I was a young attorney doing volunteer work at the prison. She was different from the others. Not because she claimed innocence, many do, but because of how she talked about her children. Every conversation, every legal discussion, always came back to her babies. She wasn't fighting for herself. She was fighting to be their mother again. She continued, "I went home that night and couldn't stop thinking about those 4 kids growing up without their mom. I pulled her case files, and the more I read, the more convinced I became that she was innocent. The evidence was circumstantial at best. The investigation was sloppy. Her public defender had done the bare minimum." "So you took the case?" Steve prompted. "I took the case," Catherine confirmed. "My partners at the firm weren't happy. Pro bono work is one thing, but 11 years? They thought I was obsessed. Maybe I was, but I couldn't let it go. Every time I thought about quitting, I'd visit Mary, and she'd tell me about her kids, how David was helping raise his siblings, how Sarah was writing poetry about missing her mom, how Marcus was acting out because he was angry at the world, how Lisa would cry herself to sleep. How could I quit knowing that?" Mary reached out and took Catherine's hand. "You saved us. All of us." "You saved yourselves," Catherine replied. "The way this family stayed together, supported each other, refused to let bitterness win. That's all you." Steve was openly wiping his eyes now, not caring about the cameras. "This is incredible. But wait, there's more to this story, isn't there? Because Lisa, you became a lawyer specifically because of what happened to your mother." Lisa nodded. "I was in my 2nd year of law school when Catherine finally got Mom's case overturned. I'd planned to do it myself, but Catherine beat me to it. So instead, I specialized in wrongful conviction cases. I've helped free 7 people so far." "7 people?" Steve exclaimed. "You're following in Catherine's footsteps." "We work together sometimes," Catherine added proudly. "Lisa is one of the best young attorneys in the field. She has the passion that comes from personal experience and the skill that comes from determination. And I'm not stopping," Lisa said firmly. "There are too many mothers and fathers sitting in cells for crimes they didn't commit. Too many children growing up without their parents. If I can spare even one family what we went through, it's worth it." Steve turned to the other children. "And you all chose careers in helping professions. That's not a coincidence, is it?" David shook his head. "When you grow up the way we did, you either become bitter or you become determined to make things better. Mom taught us, even from prison, to choose hope over hate." "How did she do that from behind bars?" Steve asked. Sarah answered this time. "Letters. Mom wrote us letters every single day. Even when we couldn't visit, even when phone calls were restricted, we got letters. She'd help us with homework through the mail. She'd send us advice about friends, about life. She never stopped being our mother, even from inside." "I still have every letter," Marcus added. "Thousands of them. Whenever I had a bad day at school, whenever I missed her so much it hurt, I'd read her letters and remember that she loved us, that she was fighting to come home." Mary was crying too hard to speak, so Lisa continued. "She'd trace her hand on paper and send it to us when we were little, so we could put our hands on hers. She'd write out recipes and have Grandma cook them for us, so we could taste Mama's cooking. She found a way to mother us, even when she couldn't touch us." Steve had to take a moment. The audience was in tears. Even the camera operators were wiping their eyes. The red suit that had seemed so bold and powerful now seemed perfect, a symbol of the passion and strength this family had shown. "Mary," Steve finally said, "what kept you going?" 17 years is a long time to maintain hope." Mary composed herself enough to answer. "My babies. Every night in that cell, I'd picture their faces. I'd imagine David's graduation, Sarah's wedding, Marcus becoming a nurse, Lisa arguing her first case. I lived on dreams of their futures. Some nights, when it got really dark, when I thought about giving up, I'd remember that they were out there, growing up, needing to know that their mama didn't quit." "And you didn't quit," Steve said softly. "No, sir, I didn't quit. Even when the appeals failed, Even when witnesses disappeared, even when it seemed hopeless, I didn't quit. Because quitting would mean my children were right to suffer. And I couldn't let that be true. Catherine spoke up again. I need to tell you all something else. The reason I'm here today, the reason I wanted to do this publicly, is because Mary doesn't know the whole story about those 11 years. Everyone looked at her in surprise, including Mary. What do you mean? Mary asked. Catherine smiled. You know I worked pro bono, but you don't know that your children were helping. David, tell her about the car washes. David looked embarrassed. It was nothing, really. Tell her, Catherine insisted. David sighed. When I turned 18, I started organizing car washes in the neighborhood. Every weekend, we'd wash cars to raise money for Mom's legal defense. Even though Catherine wasn't charging us, there were still costs, filing fees, expert witnesses, investigators. Sarah added, I did bake sales at school. Every Friday, I'd bring in cookies and brownies. The teachers all knew why. And they'd buy everything, even if they didn't want it. Marcus jumped in. I mowed lawns. Every lawn in our neighborhood. After school and weekends. Saved every penny. And I had a lemonade stand. Lisa said quietly. From age 8 to 15. Even in winter, I'd sell hot chocolate. The neighbors would pay $20 for a cup that cost 50 cents to make because they knew where the money was going. Mary was sobbing again. You did all that? My babies? You did all that? We raised over $100,000 over the years, David said. It paid for the investigator, who finally found the evidence that freed you. Catherine nodded. These kids never gave up. They funded the investigation that found the real embezzler's financial records. They paid for the forensic accountant who proved the original evidence was fabricated. They didn't just wait for you to come home, Mary. They fought to bring you home. Steve was struggling to maintain his composure. I don't have words. In all my years doing this show, I've never heard anything like this. A family that refused to be broken by injustice. Children who became warriors for their mother. An attorney who gave 11 years of her life for justice. And a woman who survived 17 years of wrongful imprisonment with grace and hope intact. He turned to the audience. This is what love looks like, folks. This is what family really means. The audience was on their feet, applauding through their tears. The other family had abandoned their podiums to join in the standing ovation. Even the production crew was clapping. When the applause finally died down, Steve made an announcement. We're going to do something different today. Both families are going to receive the maximum prize money because there are no losers when you witness something this powerful. And Mary, we have one more surprise for you. Mary looked like she couldn't handle any more surprises, but Steve continued. Our sponsors have been watching backstage. They want to establish a scholarship fund in your name for children who have parents in prison. Full college tuition for kids who are going through what your children went through. Mary's legs gave out completely this time, and her children caught her, holding her up as she cried. That's too much. I don't deserve. Yes, you do, Steve said firmly. You deserve that, and so much more. And your children deserve to see their mother honored for the strength she showed and the love she never stopped giving. Lisa spoke through her tears. Mom, do you know how many kids we met over the years who were going through the same thing? Visiting their parents, trying to stay hopeful? This scholarship could change their lives. The Mary Taylor Scholarship for Children of the Incarcerated, Catherine announced. It has a nice ring to it. As the family embraced, Steve addressed the camera directly. Sometimes this show is about funny answers and family competition, but sometimes, like today, it's about something bigger. It's about the power of love to survive injustice. It's about children who refuse to give up on their parent. It's about attorneys who fight for what's right, even when there's no money in it. And it's about a mother who spent 17 years in a cage but never stopped being a mama. He turned back to Mary. Mary Taylor, you are a hero. Your children are heroes. Catherine Chen is a hero, and we are honored to have you on our stage today. Mary finally found her voice. "Steve, can I say something?" "Of course," Steve replied. Mary looked directly at the camera. "To anyone out there who has a loved one in prison, who's fighting a wrongful conviction, who feels like giving up, don't give up. It took 17 years, but justice found me. My babies never stopped believing, and neither should you. The system failed me, but love didn't. Love never fails." "And to the children," she continued, "the ones visiting their parents, writing letters, putting their hands on glass windows instead of hugging. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are loved more than you know. Your parents are fighting to come home to you just like I fought to come home to mine." The studio was silent, except for sniffles and quiet sobs. Steve took Mary's hand and raised it high. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Taylor. 17 years of wrongful imprisonment couldn't break her. And look what love built in those 17 years. 4 incredible children who changed the world because their mother taught them how to hope." As the show wrapped up, both families mingled on stage. Catherine was hugging each of the Taylor children, telling them how proud she was. The competing Johnson family was exchanging contact information, moved by the story and wanting to help with the scholarship fund. Steve pulled Lisa aside. "You know, we have a lot of viewers. After this airs, I bet you're going to get some calls about wrongful conviction cases." Lisa smiled through her tears. "I hope so. Mom served 17 years for someone else's crime. Catherine worked 11 years for free to fix it. The least I can do is spend my career making sure it doesn't happen to other families." "Your mama raised you right," Steve said. "Even from inside." "She did," Lisa agreed. "She taught us that love is stronger than walls, hope is stronger than despair, and family is stronger than any system that tries to break it." As the families prepared to leave the stage, Mary stopped and turned back to Steve. "Thank you for letting us share our story. For 17 years, I felt invisible, forgotten by the world. Today, you made us visible again." Steve, still in his bold red suit that seemed to capture all the passion and pain and triumph of the day, replied simply, "Thank you for reminding us what really matters. Not the game, not the prizes, but family. Always family." The Taylor family left the stage together, arms linked, heads held high. They'd come to play a game show. But they'd done something much more important. They'd shown the world what unconditional love looks like. They'd proven that families can survive anything if they refuse to let go of each other. In the days following the taping, the story of Mary Taylor and her children would spread across social media, inspiring thousands of families dealing with incarceration. The scholarship fund would raise millions. 7 more wrongfully convicted individuals would reach out to Lisa and Catherine, beginning journeys toward freedom. But in that moment, as they walked off the Family Feud stage, they were simply a mother and her 4 children, together at last, free at last, and finally able to write the next chapter of their lives with their own hands. The red suit Steve wore that day would become one of his most memorable outfits, forever linked to the day Family Feud became more than a game show. It became a platform for justice, a stage for redemption, and a witness to the unstoppable power of a mother's love and a family's faith. As Steve would later say in interviews, "I've worn a lot of suits in my time hosting Family Feud, but that red suit on that Tuesday in November, that wasn't just fashion. That was the color of Mary Taylor's fighting spirit, the color of her children's unwavering love, and the color of Catherine Chen's passionate pursuit of justice. Some days you wear the suit. That day, the suit wore me, and I was honored to be part of their story." The game show that started with a simple survey of 100 people ended with a truth that needed no survey to confirm. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, and when a family stands together, no prison walls, no unjust system, no amount of time can break the bonds that hold them together. Mary Taylor went to prison when Lisa was 7 years old. She came home when Lisa was 24. But in all those years, through all those letters, through all those glass-windowed visits, through all those tears and prayers and sleepless nights, she never stopped being their mother. And they never stopped being her reason to survive. That's what family is. That's what love does. And that's why, on a Tuesday in November, in a television studio in Atlanta, wearing a red suit that would forever be part of television history, Steve Harvey got to witness and share one of the most powerful reunions ever broadcast. The Taylor family's appearance on Family Feud wasn't about winning money or prizes, though the $2.8 million check in the scholarship fund would change many lives. It was about telling a truth that needed to be heard. That justice delayed doesn't have to mean love denied. That children can be stronger than any system that tries to orphan them. And that sometimes the best attorneys are the ones who measure success not in billable hours, but in families reunited. 17 years, 6,205 days, 148,920 hours. That's how long Mary Taylor spent paying for someone else's crime. But her children made every one of those hours count, filling them with love, with hope, with the absolute certainty that one day their mother would come home. And when she finally did, they were ready. Not just to welcome her back, but to help her reclaim her life, pursue her dreams, and turn her pain into purpose. Because that's what the Taylor family does. They take the worst that life can throw at them and transform it into something beautiful. As the studio lights dimmed and the audience filed out, many still wiping tears, the truth of what had just happened settled over everyone present. They hadn't just watched a game show. They'd witnessed a testament to the human spirit, a celebration of justice finally served, and a love letter to every family fighting against impossible odds. Mary Taylor walked into Family Feud as a contestant. She walked out as a symbol of hope for every person wrongfully convicted, every child missing an incarcerated parent, and every family refusing to let the system define their story. And somewhere in heaven, her mother, who had raised 4 grandchildren while their mother fought for freedom, was surely smiling, knowing that her sacrifice had not been in vain. The family that had been broken by injustice had been forged by love into something unbreakable. And on that Tuesday in November, in front of cameras and a studio audience, they showed the world what victory really looks like. Not points on a board or money in the bank, but a mother surrounded by the children she never stopped fighting to return to. Finally free to be the family they were always meant to be. Steve Harvey has hosted thousands of episodes of Family Feud. He's seen families compete, laugh, argue, and celebrate. But the Taylor family gave him something different. They gave him the privilege of witnessing love win its longest, hardest battle. And that red suit he wore that day? It would forever remind him that sometimes the most important moments in television happen when you stop playing games and start celebrating the triumphs of the human heart.